They put a levy on my bank account, a lien on my assets, like the worst case scenario, because I owed over $250,000 in back taxes, $250,000 in back taxes. Establishing the mind of the Messiah is no easy task. In fact, when I grew up, I was raised by a very lunatic Filipina Catholic mother, very dogmatic, very pragmatic, and I was turned off by religion. I was turned off by Catholicism, which is probably why I found witchy things and New Age and the occult so intriguing. However, in 2020, when I discovered Neville Goddard and started diving deep into his manuscripts as well as Joseph Murphy, I realized I was reading the Bible wrong. I had always read it literally, like most of us, but it's supposed to be read symbolically. You see, this 10,000-year-old manuscript is your spiritual autobiography. Every biblical character is a personification of you as you move through different states of consciousness, including Jesus Christ. You see, you are Jesus Christ, and his journey in the Bible is a reflection of your own. Now, to the metaphysician, Jesus Christ is not one entity. Jesus is actually symbolized as your perfected conscious mind, which is your left brain hemisphere, and Christ, or the indwelling Christ, is your subconscious mind found in your right brain hemisphere. Now, when the conscious mind has been refined to perceive only the truth, then the subconscious mind will naturally reset back to its original default state, bringing both hemispheres into harmony. This is the divine union or divine marriage that Scripture speaks of, right? The marriage is not an external marriage between man and woman, but rather it's the union between the right and left brain hemisphere. This is a hemisync synchronization. Now, this natural default state that your subconscious mind returns to is free from all psychological debris, allowing you to begin from a place of infinity or infinite potential. Another way to say this is that you're transitioning from a place of mental limitation and contraction to complete mental liberation and expansion. So let's take a closer look at Revelations 21:6. This particular Bible verse says, "It is done. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end." The metaphysical meaning of this particular Bible verse is begin with the end in mind. Now, many of us are familiar with the infamous statue in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. It's called Christ the Redeemer, and the statue stands at the top of the mountaintop with his arms wide open. Now, what I love most about this particular statue is that it's reminding me the state of mind that I should always be in, which is declaring endless possibilities, this arms wide open attitude of always receiving my infinite good. I'm claiming boundless opportunities. I am assuming the best possible outcome. I'm always imagining my dream case scenario. I insist on immeasurable gain. Like I'm envisioning endless ideas and endless opportunities. It's your infinite potential. That's what the statue is representing. You as Jesus Christ, where Jesus, your conscious mind, has been refined and perfected so that it now impresses this infinite potential onto the subconscious mind. Now these two parts of your hemisphere are synchronized. This is the divine union, the divine marriage within you. And here's the best part. Because not only are you contemplating your ultimate desire taking place, you're going to bear witness to your own prophecies. That means you will personally experience and observe the fulfillment of all of the predictions you once made. That is the true meaning of Jesus Christ within you, the indwelling Christ within you, arms wide open, envisioning, imagining, declaring, and claiming your infinite good to you. And that is how you establish the mind of the Messiah. So I want to give you a real life example on how I started implementing biblical principles and establishing the mind of the Messiah to correct a financial situation that I got myself into. Now, this financial situation that I got myself into was from past erroneous mental images. I had the wrong mental disposition, and it caused that current situation that I was in. Around 2014 to 2019, I had earned 7 figures in my health and wellness business. And I still have this health and wellness business, but it's now being built differently than how I built it back then. Because back then, I mismanaged money. I was very irresponsible with money. I never gave complete gratitude about the earnings that were coming in. I just blew it, kept up with the, trying to keep up with the Joneses, very egotistical, very pragmatic, very dogmatic, very left brain on how I built the business, managed the business, and even talked to my customers. It was all wrong. And I was quickly humbled because here's what happened. I never paid my taxes. I was very irresponsible because I lacked the correct mental blueprint on how to handle my finances. I was taught all wrong. In 2020, when I discovered Neville Goddard, I realized the error of my ways. And so I had to go back into the past and revise every financial mistake that I had made. Because here's what happened. Here's what was showing up in my life. I was dealing with paralyzing fear because the IRS was coming after me. I was receiving threatening letters, threatening phone calls. They put a levy on my bank account, a lien on my assets, like the worst case scenario, because I owed over $250,000 in back taxes, $250,000 in back taxes. And I didn't know how to pay it because I didn't have any money because we went through the pandemic and my business started to decline because I assumed everything to be true regarding my business and the pandemic, and the correlation between the pandemic and my business was going to fail. I assumed that to be true. When I met Neville Goddard, I realized the error of my ways, and I go, oh, okay, that was my past mental disposition. This is why all of this stuff is happening in my life, and I need to correct this. So I surrendered. I let go. I even screamed out the proverbial phrase, Jesus, take the wheel. But I didn't say that to beseech an external Jesus out there. I knew exactly who Jesus was, and it was the perfected conscious mind within me. My current conscious mind was seeing bad, not good, fear, threatening letters. It was perceiving everything wrong. But I knew that if I could claim, and call forth the perfected conscious mind within me, the Jesus within me, then I could course correct this entire situation. So that's what I began to do. Every letter, every phone call, anything that was coming into the mail where I could see with my physical senses, perceive with my 5 physical senses, I denied it. I would write on the letter, scratch it out, and then at the top, I would say, I am redeemed. Then, with those correct mental images, I could impress onto the subconscious mind, which means I started to go into my alpha brainwave frequency state and see myself redeemed. I assumed that I was emancipated. I assumed that I was on good terms with the IRS. I was very ignorant about this situation because I wanted to have a very childlike point of view or perspective about all of this. And with the arms wide open, I said, well, what if? What if I could actually redeem myself? What if I could just imagine the best case scenario and I'm okay with the IRS and they're not this Goliath or this big, scary organization? What if I was liberated? What if? What if? And that's all that's being asked of us to establish the mind of the Messiah, is to create this infinite potential, to see, to envision, to imagine the best case scenario. And I was loyal to that for 2 years. Loyal to that imaginal scene, loyal to that preferred outcome, regardless of what was coming in the mail. I just kept telling myself, what if? What if I could redeem myself? And just imagined and felt liberated, emancipated, redeemed. And then 2 years later, all of my back taxes were absolved. And I figured out how to become 100% non-tax obligated, which means I no longer owe taxes, I no longer owed back taxes, and I no longer owe future taxes. I positioned myself where I never have to pay taxes again. That's powerful. That's establishing the mind of the Messiah. That's allowing yourself to surrender and allow the subconscious mind to take over, because it's the subconscious mind that has direct access to the superconscious mind or God. And it will begin to course correct and fix anything that you perceive as wrong. But I first had to establish the mind of the Messiah, Jesus, in seeing everything in my life as already whole and perfect, fixed, redeemed, liberated, emancipated. Just for a lack of all the fancy words, I just felt freedom. Financial freedom. I didn't get specific with all the details. All I said to myself, I'm just going to be like a child about this. Just what if? What if the best case scenario actually happened? What if Neville Goddard was actually right? What if scripture was actually right? And I just stayed in that very ignorant, childlike state of what if? What if everything worked out in my favor? That's how I did it. And 2 years later, I was shown how to get rid of my taxes. And then I was shown, like 6 months or a year later, how to never have taxes going forward, which I will share this process with you. But first, it's establishing the mindset, because the paperwork doesn't matter. The paperwork is irrelevant until you first established the mind. So that's what I'm here to do, is to help you establish the mind of the Messiah first. Then you can get the dream marriage. Then you can have the dream finances. Then you can have the dream health. But first, it's establishing the mind of the Messiah and having this arms wide open attitude of, I'm receiving my infinite good. I'm going to come from a place. I'm going to claim the best case scenario. I'm going to see and envision, because I want to prophesy over my life. I'm going to deny whatever is happening in front of me. I'm going to deny whatever my eyes and ears and, whatever I'm reading and hearing and seeing. I'm going to deny all of that. Course correct my mental disposition. The conscious mind has to perceive good at all times, regardless of what's happening. And you do that over and over. You stay loyal to that over and over and over. 2 years it took me. Some of you can't even last 2 weeks or 2 months, much less 2 days. But 2 years I stayed loyal to biblical principles, and I stayed loyal to God's promise that I would be redeemed. But I needed to control the beast first, which is my conscious mind, because it was perceiving some ugly things. And I had to correct it on the spot. I must perceive good. And the way that I perceived good was by taking a red pen on that nasty, threatening letter from the IRS and scratching out all the ugly words and replacing it with good words. And at the top, I am redeemed, or, I owed $0 to the IRS. And that felt better. That felt good. And I stayed in that state of mind until it objectified in my physical reality. Under the sunlight, welcome to